Welcome to Sports, Clicks, and Politics with your hosts, Ben Hussong and me, Shawn Hannon. Welcome to episode 114 of Sports, Clicks, and Politics. I think I may have messed the intro up, but thank you for making it through that and joining us for another episode 114, I guess.
Sure.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Shawn Hannon. This is Ben Hussong, for those that playing at home who don't remember. But how was your weekend?
Weekend was good.
Any eventful four-season activities taking place?
Nothing eventful.
I mean, we didn't need it. It was like 80 or something.
It was a beautiful weekend.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I spent most of Saturday.
That was fake news, by the way. It was like 74, but still, go ahead. Sorry.
It's all right. I spent most of Saturday splitting wood, cutting up some trees, and running a wood splitter. So that was work.
Yeah, that sounds like work.
It was. But it was good. We got a lot more to go, but we're getting there little by little.
Because I've been watching and perusing like off the grid like prepper sites of recent weeks.
Sure.
I come across a wood splitter where you actually put the wood in a holder and then you just hit it with a hammer and it just splits down on the.
Oh, I've seen that.
Like a reverse thing.
Yeah. Instead of swinging, I feel like that's just as much work. You
still have to swing, but you don't have to. There's no balancing of the wood. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's already held. But go ahead.
So 4 of my neighbors and I went in on a wood splitter together. So we have. This is like no joke, industrial grade. Everything is getting split.
Who gets that in the apocalypse?
I mean, technically, it's in my name.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
So, but I am also like the least qualified of all the neighbors to run it. So I think that we would have to divide and conquer. I don't know. I mean, somebody else could probably take it.
I'm going to be following you around in the apocalypse, right? Whatever Ben wants.
It's only in my name because I got a 10% discount at Home Depot for having served in a combat zone.
Oh, well.
So that's the real reason it's in my name, is that way we could get 10% off of it.
I mean, I think that should create an inheritance to you for that item as well.
We'll cross it.
All
We'll
right.
cross that bridge if it comes.
Let's hope it never happens.
Amen.
Yeah.
So then Sunday we had a Halloween party over at the ice cream shop, which was a lot of fun. Saw some people we hadn't seen in a while.
A lot of pumpkins?
Great. No, we had a spider sundae.
Okay.
We have pumpkin custard right now, so like that's been there. And then we did a candy corn bomber, which is like a Blizzard or a McFlurry. We call them bombers, and that was well received. And we did a orange soda float for Halloween in a jack-o'-lantern cup. So a lot of orange and white coloring going on.
Very festive.
It was.
Yeah,
it
nice.
Was. But
Very
no, it was a good day. Everybody had a good time. Did face painting and all that fun stuff. So spent that day and then closed out the day with a wonderful football game to watch.
I fell asleep, but I saw that they won.
I don't blame you.
Oh.
I mean, I didn't because I was into it.
Well, sure.
I don't blame anybody if they did, because the first half was pretty back and forth. It was a little exciting. Bills looked like they were going to run away, and then the second half was kind of like,
Like they were toying with him, with the Bills defense toying with the not so ageless wonder Aaron Rodgers.
No, I think the Packers were just content to continually run the ball and just eat up clock as if they weren't down by 17.
Did you think that they were, at the risk of bursting into NFL talk early here, but did you think that Rodgers, I mean, it's still only 8 weeks, but that's half the season, was going to be as bad without Adams as he is, Ben?
Yes.
You thought he was going to be as bad?
I don't think it's necessarily just
because... I mean, because it seemed, and I guess maybe we'll just move right over to the NFL stuff, and we'll go right into it there. So, to me, I always thought Aaron Rodgers elevated his receivers, right? So there was, I don't know, there was somebody Brooks back in the day who was good all of a sudden, these are fantasy related,
Robert
but
Brooks, I believe,
could have been, and the Randall Cobbs of the world and all these guys who, and there's others who seem to have just emerged because Aaron Rodgers could throw it into any window he wanted, right? And Adams wasn't great out of the chute. Like, I know he was kind of a high round. I think he was maybe even a first-round draft pick. But either way, he wasn't like, I don't think he was thought of as being like some dominant receiver or whatever. I think like he was like from the Virginias or something, right? Maybe. But anyway, so he seemed to emerge because, to me, it was Rodgers was building up Adams. Like, he was figuring out how to work that. And then Adams went, and he seems to still be having big games and with a lesser quarterback, not as frequently, but I don't know. It seemed that seemed like a I didn't think there was going to be a drop-off. I just figured whoever was next on the board, the Lazars of the world, was going to be the guy, and Aaron Rodgers was going to figure it out. Yeah. I had Sammy Watkins in my first week in fantasy, but go ahead.
Literally, I took in my full season leagues like every Packers wide receiver in the late rounds, thinking like, well, somebody's going to turn around. Yeah, somebody's going to get it. And I still think that'll happen, but the reason I'm not surprised it's taken this long is it's like 3 prongs. Number one, Aaron Rodgers is not a young man anymore.
No.
All right, he's getting older.
He's the healthiest probably person in the NFL, maybe.
Probably correct.
Go ahead.
But
he's unvaxxed. So
either way, he is and his commitment level to football is not what Tom Brady's is. Like, it's just not there. He didn't go to a lot of the summertime stuff and all that. So all right, that's fine. He's entitled to that. He's earned his money. He's got his ring. He is already going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. Sure, Hall of Famer, everything else. Okay, fine. Second reason is these wide receivers are both the ones they're bringing in are either pros that there's a reason they've been journeymen forever. They're just not that good. And the 2 guys they brought in as rookies, one is from a Division II school and the other one was at Nevada. Like, they are not used to playing against this caliber of offense or defense, and it's going to take time. So I still think like Romeo Doubs will probably end up being quite good, but there's a transition that has to occur. And the third reason that I think Aaron Rodgers wasn't just going to be able to magically lift them is because the offense they run in Green Bay, by all accounts, is incredibly complicated. Is like exact precision, is very a lot of steps to it. So for Aaron Rodgers, that's probably not a huge deal, but for the young wide receivers coming out of Nevada and an FBS school to go into that complex offense, the idea that there's not going to be a learning curve is crazy. Like, there's going to be a steep learning curve.
No, and like I said, I get that, but I mean, I don't know what the right number is, but I feel like there's only 12 routes to run, right? So like, there's only so many routes you run, and yeah, there are some of these options where the receivers are going to try to figure out, if there was a zone, they're going to try to figure out which side,
right.
to try. There needs to be some working of chemistry. Yes. I get that. So, but none of those receivers even look remotely good. And even
I think Romeo Doubs looks all right. I think he's young, he's raw, but I think he's got talent.
I know, but if I was to compare him to the kid Pickens on the Steelers, like, that kid looks like he's a really, really good receiver.
He does.
And this guy doesn't, and he has no quarterback. And anyway, who knows? Right. Again, they're both 2 young kids. But you would think Rodgers would be able to, I don't know, of all positions, be able to move the receivers up
and I think
more quickly.
I think it'll take a little more time. But I think we also have exceedingly high expectations of Aaron Rodgers compared to anybody.
Right. Well, that's why we're even having the discussion, right? Because he's in discussion with Tom Brady. Right. Basically, that's the only reason why we're even talking about this. Because he has not done that this year. Neither is Tom Brady, I guess, either. But
no, I think the Packers will work it out and they'll be okay. They've I don't know. I wouldn't panic either. But the Minnesota Vikings being 6-1 is bad news for the Packers.
Yeah, they're significantly behind the 8 ball there in the division there. So I don't know. Steelers did not allow the Dolphins to sip their champagne, so the Eagles remain undefeated. Hurts looks good. I've been playing Hurts in fantasy since literally his first game, and he's been good. So I'm not shocked by any of this. I mean, it's 7-0, so it's not craziness. But anything else over the NFL weekend strike you as something of note?
Jets lost in a very Jets fashion, which was always funny to watch. I don't know what New England is doing anymore as a football organization, but God bless them. I'm also not.
I mean, when you're rotating between, was it Brett Zappi and Mac Jones? I mean, what are you doing?
And you have 2 defensive coordinators calling your offensive plays.
And obviously it turned out the other way, but Garoppolo was on the bench starting the season, and he was the Patriots' property.
Yeah, once upon a time.
Anyway.
And San Francisco does look better now with Christian McCaffrey. It was a good addition. I don't know if that elevates them to the next level, but they're probably right on the fringe anyway of being a Super Bowl contender. Maybe that does push them in. I don't know. Time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, that division's a little weird. The Seahawks are on top, which is, you know what I mean?
How is Geno Smith playing football like this? Yeah. Where did this come from? Somebody call Ryan Nassib. We got to pull him in. Maybe he's got some magic left too.
Yeah. It's hard for me to believe that the Seahawks are going to win that division. I think all 3 teams behind them are better. The Niners, the Rams, and the Cardinals all should be better, but none of them are right now. So who knows? I don't know. NFC is still kind of parity. Other than the Eagles and the Vikings, I mean, you want to count the Giants and I said I don't know. The Cowboys look good finally.
I think the Cowboys are good if they just stick to the plan of run, and then let
Zeke
Dak
was out
throw.
this week, so they just ran a bunch of other guys. I know.
Tony Pollard is arguably a better running back than Zeke right now, but they can't do anything with Zeke because of the ridiculous contract they gave him. So he's on the team for better or for worse, even though Tony Pollard is making 1/20th of what you're paying Zeke and is just as productive, if not more. Great job over there, Jerry. You're killing it as always.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see. So, yeah, football, it's just the Chiefs and the Bills are super good. The NFC is far more.
Listen, I do think the Eagles have kind of separated themselves from everybody else. Like, I think the Vikings are okay. I like their coaches okay. Like, I'm not sold on Kirk Cousins winning a Super Bowl. All the rest of their pieces are great, though. I mean, their receiver core is great. Their tight end's decent. Their running back's great. Their defense is good enough. They're probably the second best team in the NFC, but I think that's a distant second and a very distant fourth if you're going to use the Bills, Chiefs, and Eagles as a top tier.
I mean,
I don't even know who. I wouldn't put anybody else even close to the discussion. I don't care what your record is. Those three teams are the only ones who I think have a shot to win the whole thing right now. You? Chiefs, Bills. If you said Chiefs, Bills, Eagles, who would be your fourth team?
I
mean, it's going to have to be one of these teams who needs to get right, if you will. The Niners or the Rams or something, they get hot, or DeAndre Hopkins back with the Cardinals kind of lifts them and they go on a run. It's going to have to be a team with talent. Like the NFC, I mean, I don't think the Packers, the Bears, and the Lions have talent to win. I do not think that the Commanders or the Giants have talent to win, even though they're 6-2. The NFC South is a joke. Falcons, Buccaneers, Saints, Panthers. Falcons are in first at 4-4. I mean, they're not a Super Bowl. They're not even a playoff team, let alone being. I mean, it's maybe the Saints can rally if they can figure out a quarterback.
I mean, you're writing off Tom Brady awfully early.
I'm writing off Tom Brady. Wow. They look terrible.
They do, but I'm too scarred as a Bills fan.
I mean, they lost to the Steelers.
I will never write the guy off.
They lost to the Steelers, costing me $1,500.
Sorry to hear that. You sound like you took that personally.
So really, if I were to pick a fourth team,
I think it's the 49ers.
It almost has to be.
Yeah. Listen, the Chargers are still arguably going to be in the run because they're.
I think the Rams got to be in the same discussion with the Niners.
Rams, I agree. The Rams,
they're the same thing.
49ers,
right?
The Chargers, I think, are there. I think that Chiefs. Yeah, they're. Listen, it's the top tier. I agree with you. Is the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Eagles. I don't think it's completely insane for this next tier teams to be considered close. I do think we're overvaluing Philadelphia a little bit right now. They're a very good team, but they're not going on.
They have pieces, though. I mean, so it's not. I mean, Hurts is I think in a top tier quarterback. He's not obviously he's unconventional, but he's got weapons too. I mean, when they got Brown, that kind of gave them a legit alpha number one guy where like, okay, all else fails, just throw it up to him. He's usually going to win 50-50 of those, majority of the time, right? So I don't know. And their defense is pretty good. So I don't know. I'd be shocked right now at halfway mark if any one of those three teams did not win the Super Bowl.
Well,
I know the Bengals did what they did at the end, and things can happen. But again, it seems like there's a clear separation, at least halfway through the season.
Yeah, and listen, again, I'm not taking anything away from the Eagles. They are a very good team. I'm just saying, if you look at who they've played, I don't know. It's not a terrible schedule. Like the two best wins are probably Arizona and Minnesota, who I think you and I would.
Minnesota clearly that's their only loss.
Not top tier teams.
Well, they're 6-1, right? The Minnesota would be undefeated if they hadn't lost to the Eagles. I don't think they're the fourth best team. The Vikings, right. That is, but I
don't either. I think there's a lot of football still to play. And listen, the reality is Philadelphia's schedule doesn't even get hard. Holy crap, ever. Well, yeah, maybe they will go undefeated. Who knows?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think that they're talented enough to win the Super Bowl, which is.
Oh, I agree with that.
There's not that many teams who I think that about. That's all.
That's fair.
Weird season in the NFL. I mean, they almost always are weird, but this one.
Particularly so.
I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I just don't feel. Maybe it's because it's the new era, the Brady Rodgers have
the torch
plummeted so fast that I wasn't expecting just the baton torch to be handed to Josh Allen so quickly. Anyway, so
I mean, listen, I'm not handing it to Josh Allen until he wins something. I'm not. Like, you got to win it. Sorry, buddy.
I mean, Trent Dilfer has a Super Bowl.
I get it. But nobody considers Trent Dilfer in that top tier.
I'm just saying.
Obviously. All right?
I get it.
But,
I get what you're saying.
But if you want to be the guy, you need a ring.
Okay.
All right? You notice that you never say it was handed off from Marino over to Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning.
No,
it wasn't. Even though Dan Marino was arguably the best quarterback in the era, but you didn't get the ring, therefore you are out of the conversation. You don't get to be the guy.
I get it. Elway, he got those 2 rings. Everybody talked about him differently, right?
Montana and Elway over Jim Kelly and Dan Marino, because Dan Marino and Jim Kelly didn't get a ring. You got to get the ring Jim Kelly almost gets in on an asterisk
only as a
for
quarterback.
getting to 4 in a row. All right, that's the reality. So if you get to 4 in a row and lose all 4, you almost get like a participation trophy of, all right, we'll count you.
All right.
Oh, that's a good point. The Bears were once 11-3 when Rex Grossman was their quarterback. The record is not everything.
Yes, exactly. So let's touch on, this is not NFL, I don't think yet anyway. She hasn't switched careers yet, but did you see Brittney Griner to serve 9 years? She lost her appeal in the, I'm sure, the above-board fair Russian court system or whatever they got going on over there.
The Russian system might be legit. I have no idea.
No, me neither. I have
never
no idea.
looked into it.
I have expectations on all court systems to be less than fair. That's just
I agree.
Especially when they're basically political prisoners, which this is clearly is. So that's funny. But anyway,
that's
not funny for her. It's funny that it resorts to basically she has become a political prisoner. Has nothing to do with her whatsoever. She committed the act or whatever, but like the whole. If she was anybody else, 9 years is probably not likely the scenario here. But
again, I maintain whoever was in charge of her was ever like looking at her agent, her manager, whomever it is, did her a disservice by letting her go play basketball in Russia. There are countries in Europe that allow you to smoke marijuana. So even if you got to take $100,000 less a year to play, maybe you should have gone to Estonia where you wouldn't have ended up in prison. And now it is awful that she's in there. But I hope that if nothing else, all this actually does is encourages us to look at our own justice system and go, oh, we're not that different. We got a lot of people sitting in prison for a very long time over very similar offenses. So maybe before we cast stones, I don't know, maybe this is the wake-up call to get our own house in order and say, oh, maybe there's just too much stuff that's illegal. Maybe we need to dial it back a little bit so we don't ruin people's lives for smoking a plant. Well,
speaking of that, and this is not on the board, and I did not send you any of this stuff, but did you see that Tilray is exploding again this morning on news that there's going to be, just in time for the midterms, a marijuana banking laws to allow, them to claim victory for some things. But anyway, Tilray's up big.
For the love of God, we don't need a new law. Just get rid of the old one. We don't need to add. Just take some stuff away.
Why you hate on your senator so much? Your hometown Chuck Schumer. This is his banking marijuana bill.
Buddy, the show's only so long. How long do you want me to go on Chuck Schumer and what a terrible piece of crap that man is?
Did you go hang out with him when he was here last week?
I did not.
I know some of your family did.
I'm sure some of my family was there. Yeah, like my family's involved. And good for them. God bless. You know what I couldn't figure out? The president of the United States came to the city where I live. It's probably 15 minutes away.
Breaking news. We live in Syracuse. Biden was in town to announce.
No, he was in town for a political rally.
That's what it turned into. But it was on the pretense that it was going to be a announcement or in support of his CHIPS Act that brought Micron to a suburb here of Syracuse. And there was this big ado where the president, the governor, our senators, Schumer and Gillibrand, a bunch of local elected officials, all the anybody who was on the Rolodex there of the establishment was pretty much at this event, sir, and some kids.
So here's my takeaway, though. Yeah. My wife asked me on Wednesday. He was in town Thursday. She said, "Oh, when is Joe Biden coming to town?" I said, "I honestly, I don't know." She said, "Where's he going to be?" I'm like, I don't know. She said, "Do you think we should take the kids over?" No. She's like, "No." Now, I grew up actually following politics from the time I was a child. And if any other time in my life, the idea of going to see the president, Republican or Democrat or, God forbid, third party, would have absolutely been like, yeah, we should go see it. This is the president of the United States in town. It's a great opportunity. Our kids can see it. That's pretty big deal. And I have become so jaded that I literally was like, I couldn't care less. I'm going to be honest with you. She's like, and she kind of laughed. She's like, this is a big deal. I was like, I don't know. I'm not arguing with you. You're right. I'm so jaded I don't care anymore. Like, I wouldn't care if it was Donald Trump. I don't care that it's Joe Biden. I don't care that the president of the United States has come to my city, which is a really sad realization to hit of like, I care so little about these people now that I couldn't be bothered. I said, if you want to take the kids, go for it. Like, I'm not telling you not to, just I don't care. Like, that's the point I've hit. I blame you.
Did you make an effort to go see the blimp the next day?
No, I saw the blimp when I walked outside, though.
Yeah, I took pictures of the blimp. I didn't take any pictures of the president.
Did you go see him?
No.
Oh, okay.
Do you think I was going to be invited anywhere near that building? You got to be kidding me. It was invite only, people. I was not getting in, I promise you, even if I went.
No, that's probably true.
Yeah, I don't know where we were going with that, but let's move on to the end of the world. Easy segue, I think.
With Joe Biden president, I think all the signs are in
place.
That's
fair. Let me pull this article up so you guys can actually read it here instead of just this black screen.
Joe Biden is the most powerful man in the world, and now the world's going to end?
No, but tonight, if we, I don't think you can actually see it because it's like 6 lunar distances away or whatever they called it. I can't remember exactly. I'll read it here in a second when I pull up the article here. But there is a asteroid buzzing the tower, if you will, tonight.
Oh, boy.
Over the Earth. A monstrously large, potentially hazardous asteroid will zip through Earth's orbit on Halloween.
Ooh.
So tonight, Mr. Hussong and everybody playing at home can, again, I don't think there's any, maybe if you have one of those telescope things, you can watch it, but I don't think it's that close or whatever. There's no indication that you're going to be able to see this thing, but apparently it's pretty close. You could probably search some of these videos on YouTube right now or anywhere else you want to search, but Randall Carlson and some other people have done the origins of Halloween, kind of like an alternative take on it, and how Halloween is based, or in theory could be based off a comet meteor shower that could have done, some stuff back in the day, and because there is a stream of meteors that the Earth zips through every year at this time of year, that is why there's this recurring thing around Halloween and whatever. But you guys can look all that stuff, and you can look it up on YouTube yourself, Mr. Hussong. But there is an alternative theory about the emergence of the holiday we are celebrating today, which we didn't wish anybody a happy Halloween.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the official narrative of Halloween? I have no idea why we celebrate Halloween.
Well, it's All Saints Eve, right? So there's some kind of whatever the Hallows, whatever the day tomorrow is. This was the eve of that, so it's some kind of like witch thing. I feel like again, you're not my wheelhouse of history, but I have heard that part of it. Yeah,
you saying an alternative?
Everybody else can look. Yeah, well, there is a mainstream.
I don't know what that is. Oh. So, like the alternative.
I feel like it's got a little bit of religious aspects to it, but I'm sure the people playing at home know all this already.
All right. Yeah, happy Halloween, everybody.
Yeah. You know what else is going on?
No.
Hawaii's going to erupt.
Oh, I've never been.
So Hawaii on red alert as earthquake swarm detected under world's largest active volcano.
Uh-oh.
This is from Friday, October 28th. So the island, this is from Zero Hedge. The island of Hawaii is on high alert as earthquake swarms continue around the world's largest active volcano, Mauna Loa. Scientists are worried about an eruption, but not sure if this one is imminent as magma churns underneath, generating dozens of quakes daily, according to the AP, which is fake news. They are. The Earth is in flux, Mr. Hussong.
Sure.
Let's just say that. I pay attention to all this stuff because this is what I do in my free time, is pay attention to earthquakes, volcanoes, and asteroids, apparently. So, and cool. Solar flares and all this other crazy nonsense. Yeah, I know, that's what I do. But I got my eyes on this one. Obviously, remember, was it 2018 did the volcano on the Big Island kind of erupted then, too? So, I don't know. This is, they're getting 40 to 50 minor little earthquakes every day, so.
I'll level with you. I don't remember the volcano erupting in 2018.
Yeah, well, I was there, and well, you don't know this, but I was there taking some Bitcoin winnings and went to Hawaii in 2017, got to see the volcano park, and then it went away.
Got it.
Magma overflowed. It just basically it covered the whole park, so the park is no longer there anymore. So there we have it. Shit. So I got to see it just in the nick of time.
Honey, if you're listening, I will no longer disagree with you. We're never going to Hawaii.
It's an awesome place, dude.
It's got to be incredible.
It's the weirdest backdrop. Like the whole landscape, when you're looking around, like you just don't, it's nothing you see around here. You know what I mean? Like you're looking at weird.
If you ever look at a globe or like on your phone, if you zoom all the way out to go like over to Hawaii, it does not make sense that people live there. It just is so tiny, so in the middle of nowhere that you're like, why and how did people even end up on this island and decide, you know what, let's stay? It makes no sense whatsoever. It's not some huge landmass. It's just like, hey, we're in the middle of nowhere, and eventually it's probably going to erupt.
Well, 12,000 years ago, it was a bunch of landmass because the sea was 400 feet lower. So it was a much bigger.
Oh, that makes more sense.
You know what I mean? Not gigantically bigger, but it was much more land exposed at the end of the last ice age when the sea levels were 400 foot lower.
I got you.
As were all the continental, the whole continental ledge there, or edge, whatever they call it there, it was all exposed to, atmosphere back 12,000 years ago. Different time. I wish I was there. If I had to pick a time to go back to, that's what I would go back to. I know it's weird.
That is, like, to the flood?
Right before it, yeah.
Just before it?
Yeah, I like to see it.
You want to watch the flood?
I want to see what happens before the flood, yeah.
You're a weird dude. You're just an odd guy. Like, I don't want to live through a flood, I got to tell you. Like,
we're all going to live through that.
I don't want to live through a biblical flood. That doesn't seem ideal to me.
I've been telling you that you're going to go through this in about 25 years, right?
I'm aware.
Okay.
I'm aware.
Because we're all going to go through this in about 25 years. So
I mean, I feel like what we have going for us right now is that we don't have multiple mile-high sheets of ice sitting on the entire northern hemisphere at this point to simultaneously melt and flood. So I'm aware of the flooding. I think it might not be as bad this time around as a result of there's not that pent-up energy ready to unload on the earth.
Sure. Okay. Let's move on.
Sounds good.
Yeah. This is an article you sent me today, Mr. Hussong, and eventually I'll be able to get the graphic to work when I want it to work. You sent me this article about kind of reassessing COVID. Let me pull this article up here for you. Where did you send it to me?
I think it was the last thing I sent you.
I know, but I don't even think I have it up here. This is terrible for the show here. Yeah, I don't have it up here. Why don't I not have it up here?
I don't know.
Let me pull it up.
I feel like you should have it.
You sent it to me. I'll pull it up. But anyway, so this is an article from The Atlantic, I believe it was.
Sure is.
And bear with me, folks at home, and those of you. Hey, I guess I could take this time to remind everybody to like, share, and subscribe to the video. Seems like a worthwhile cause for us. That definitely helps us get seen in the algorithm here. So, from The Atlantic, let's declare a pandemic amnesty. We need to forgive one another for what we did and said when we were in the dark about COVID. So, you said you had some thoughts about this. I do as well, but I'll let you go first. I feel like I read the majority of this article and took in what it was kind of trying to say here, but since you shared this with me, I'll let you go first.
All right, I read the article, and essentially this woman is an economics professor who was very much on team hysteria throughout the COVID pandemic.
Emily Oster.
Doesn't strike me as like a horrible person, but bought in hook, line, and sinker. Went all in on the COVID narrative to the point they were taking hikes with masks on as a family outdoors and had a family hand symbol so they could know if somebody was coming the other way to all put their masks up. Tells the little tidbit in this article about how at one point when they were crossing a bridge, her 4-year-old son screamed at another child, social distancing, because the child came too close to her 4-year-old. So yeah, no psychological damage done to that poor kid. But now what she's saying is, hey, we just didn't know, and now is the time that we don't need to hold each other accountable, and we don't need anybody to be punished. We just need a total amnesty, and we can all move on. It's the only way forward. I disagree. And my reason is this. If like somebody like this, yeah, listen, I'm not mad at you. I think it's insane, and you owe some people an apology if you ever screamed at them in public, because that's just basic human courtesy, is you don't scream at another human being for no reason. And I'm sorry that you were scared, but that is not a sufficient reason to for your kid to scream at another kid. You should talk to your child about that. Make sure they don't do it. but I have a feeling that was wholly supported and encouraged in that household.
Well, I noticed that she just laid blame right back at us.
I mean, yeah.
In the very last sentence here, which I have highlighted here in the thing. In some instances, the right people were right for the wrong reasons. So you were right for the wrong reason.
I don't even know what the wrong reason was.
You heathen.
I know. I mean, obviously, I don't understand.
So, to your point, she's basically removed all responsibility from her own actions.
Yes.
Because
she has been proven to be wrong.
Right, and she cannot handle it, doesn't seem like.
Right. And now the only thing that she said was, I was on the right side of school debates. I said schools should be reopened. And that's fine. Like, that was the problem I have with this is this was not a time of total darkness. This was not a time where we just didn't have any information to go off of and everybody was making their best good faith attempt at sorting through what happened. You're talking about a period of time where every institution that is in place to protect us as individuals this time.
Does she know that people weren't injecting themselves with bleach?
No, she went in.
She literally references that in the article, basically saying this was one of the saddest, darkest. Like when we had to tell people not to. Like nobody was injecting themselves with bleach. It was ridiculous.
Bleach, right? There was one story about a person who did it, and it turned out it was actually the wife poisoning her husband, unbeknownst to him. So brilliantly, way to follow up on all the facts. But that aside, my issue is this: the CDC, the WHO, the NIH, the FDA, all of these organizations that are put in place to protect us as individuals abdicated their responsibility so spectacularly that it is hard to understand and hard to fathom. Like, they knew they had a pandemic playbook. They knew what they should do in the event of a pandemic, and they set it on fire as soon as one actually hit. And they just went the total opposite on everything. So even as data came in, it's not even like they were trying to understand and make decisions. They were trying to silence the people that were giving contrarian opinions. They were trying to hold these people out as fringe epidemiologists when the guy is the head epidemiologist of Stanford University. Like, you can't say that's done in good faith. I'm sorry. That if you want to have a disagreement on the merits, that would have been welcomed. But they didn't do that. Now we know that even people within the government were going to Twitter to get everybody silenced and get them removed, so that they couldn't contribute to the conversation under the guise of misinformation.
But do you know that Scott Gottlieb was the confidant, unofficially, that is, of our county executive?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he referenced Scott Gottlieb many times.
Oh.
So there you have it.
That was a bad call.
There you have it.
So, I mean, this is what I mean. I don't think it's a partisan issue. I think the Republicans bear just as much blame as the Democrats. Like, you guys want to acknowledge this or not, Donald Trump was president when we did all this. Donald Trump is the president when we green-lighted Operation Warp Speed and rushed these vaccines without any human safety trials.
His declaration of emergency is still in effect to this day, from March.
That's like, he bears responsibility for this. The idea that they had this in place, and they said, and the idea that they allowed them to vaccinate the control group of the only actual trial that was being done should go down as the biggest blunder of the entirety of the pandemic response.
Or a genius move to cover your ass.
I mean, the pharmaceutical companies, you couldn't have played this any better. They just got boosters specific to Omicron approved with the only data they presented was on 8 mice. Like,
so I'm going to correct
take
you.
A step back.
I'm going to correct you. 18 mice. There was 10 mice in one trial and 8 mice in another trial. Just go ahead. Well, I can't remember which one we had Moderna and which one was Pfizer, but it was
This changes everything.
Why
didn't you
I just
tell
didn't
me?
want to get us flagged with fake news.
All right, so 18 mice. My deepest apologies to your representatives from Moderna and Pfizer. So, but anyways, they got this thing approved when all they did was they showed data on 18 mice that showed the titers of immune response increased. And then they had their representative go in front of the EU and had to testify that no, there is actually absolutely no correlation between increased titers and a better immune response. We just assume that there probably might be, but there's no evidence to support that notion. And that got approved like 2 weeks ago. This is bananas. Like, they don't even have to do anything. So Pfizer can literally go in, like, piss on a piece of paper and be like, see, we got evidence. And the FDA is going to go, panel of experts. Yeah, good. Yeah, all right. Done. Give it to the kids. Whoa.
Speed of science, Mr. Hussong. Speed of science.
And then finally they get some real-world data back on these Omicron-specific boosters because we know the original vaccine is not really doing much for the Omicron variant. It's basically useless, maybe even an inverse relationship, making you more susceptible to adverse reactions from Omicron. So we need an Omicron-specific booster shot. And we don't have time to test this because the virus would evolve again, and then we would be left in the lurch. We have to operate at the speed of science. Cool. So now you handed it out. You shot people up in the arm with this thing. How's the results? It's actually even less effective than the original one. So the vaccine that was useless for this variant, this new variant-specific one is even less effective than that one. And they're just going to keep doing this. And now, not everybody. Now so many people have passed. The one thing she touches on in this article that I wanted to kind of expand upon. All right, let me back up. So here's my response to your cry for amnesty. No.
Second.
Sorry.
Yeah, no.
No amnesty without accountability. Not one person has been fired. Anthony Fauci is still collecting a paycheck funded by us right now, despite overseeing all of this. All right? This is unacceptable. I'm not telling you the guy's got to be, thrown in the gulag or put in front of the firing squad. The guy has to be fired.
trials.
The guy has to be fired, and the guy has to have some type of accountability because right now there is none, and that is wholly unacceptable for what he did, for the absolute lying about and covering up of the lab leak theory, which is now probably reality, and we're still doing gain-of-function research, which, holy crap, people, we need to stop doing that because it's horrifying what we're doing. Anyways, what she talks about in the article is, number one, somehow like the one of the things we need to give amnesty is the people who thought the Johnson & Johnson shot was better than the mRNA shot. Now we know the mRNA was better. No, we don't. But anyways, I digress. The bigger one is this. She points out that now the uptake of all childhood vaccines is unbelievably lower than it used to be. Unbelievably lower. It used to be every child who got the standard vaccine schedule, it wasn't even a thought process. It was not even a, hey, should we or shouldn't we? It was just like, all right, let's go get MMR, let's go get a Tdap, let's go get this. Like all of them, without a second thought, you just brought your kid in. But now, because these organizations that are supposed to exist for our benefit have lied so indiscriminately, have just unrepentantly bashed you over the head as being an idiot for daring to ask a question about, wait, I don't think my kid should get this COVID vaccine. I think that's insanity. The kid is at no medical risk and there's all these side effects, and they covered him up. They're not looking for him. They lied about it. They're approving new boosters for kids on 18 mice with no trials whatsoever, and they're just keep jamming kids. So knowing that, her response was, it's going to have to be a coordinated effort between doctors and public health officials, and we might need politicians to consider mandates for schools. Your answer to the loss of trust is to just jam it down even more, and the same people that have been lying to us, who you don't want to be held accountable whatsoever, but they want amnesty. You want us to now be like, all right, no problem, guys. You get a free do-over. And now we're supposed to trust them on all this other stuff? You're insane. You are not reading the room as it is currently laid out. You're still under the assumption that people are on your team, and the reality is you should be begging for amnesty because your side is probably going to be facing a hell of an accountability at some point. I don't know when, but as the evidence continues to come in, you were wrong. You were wrong across the board. You were spectacularly wrong, and so arrogant about it that you felt entitled, like screaming at people who took my position was an acceptable thing. Like I had to constantly be on the defensive for the position of, I'm not going to do it, just leave me alone. And that was like an indefensibly selfish position where I got called that I had a tinfoil hat on over it of like, no, they just don't work and there's a lot of side effects. Oh, here we go. All right, fine. Don't believe me. That's cool. So you better beg for amnesty, and I pray to God you don't get it. Truly, I do. Listen, I don't want these people to be punished indiscriminately or anything else. There needs to be an accountability so this never, ever, 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 ever happens again.
Yeah. Literally, she couldn't even really admit what she was wrong about. That's the whole, she was like, yeah, we were wrong, but like we were right all the way up until we were wrong.
We were wrong for the right reasons. It doesn't matter.
And so let's talk about a couple of those instances. You mentioned one. From Zero Hedge, substantial evidence. COVID-19 result of Wuhan laboratory incident from a U.S. Senate report, right? So now, not only do we have seemingly a bunch of circumstantial evidence, the mountains of that is now basically to the point where the Senate Committee on Health Education basically has submitted a report saying that the Wuhan lab leak theory is the most likely. So one point that they were wrong on, whatever. Let's talk on another one. A little bit closer to home here, but Judge tosses New York City COVID vaccine mandate, orders fired city workers back to pay. So this was a lawsuit filed in the New York Supreme Court. And for clarity, and New York does everything backwards, the New York Supreme Court is the lowest level of court system in New York. And I'm sure this will be appealed and has already been appealed. And I think there was appealed and a stay. So the original order is still in place. But the process has begun again to toss out the New York City COVID vaccine mandate. I'll call it a small victory in the process here, but another implementation from the COVID response that is now being shown to be, unconstitutional, let alone immoral. But to your point, referencing that original article, like, she doesn't admit that they were wrong to give the vaccine mandate. Like, she thinks she was right to give the vaccine mandate. Just in hindsight, they were wrong. And so, like, not in real time at all, when there were plenty of people basically saying, hey, hold the horses here a little bit. This is not right. So there's going to be other things. We've talked about, the masks thing we didn't bring up, but that's been shown to not be a thing. So more wrong misinformation coming from the establishment journalism folks there. So
if you just go read through this, and then it kind of fired it up in my brain of all the things that we talked about that were like, that we got dragged for, that people just didn't want to hear. Like, natural immunity, how rare outdoor transmission was, how rare childhood transmission was, that the vaccine tests were rigged to pass without any way they could fail. There was no possible way that they could have failed the trial. That the cloth masks were utterly useless. That social distancing was an absolute made-up joke that had no basis in science whatsoever. Like, all of these, that school closures were the worst possible things, that you had to stop closing businesses down because you were going to destroy people's lives by doing this.
At least the plexiglass worked.
Oh, and oh my God, the plexiglass. Remember one-way grocery aisles?
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, I'm like remembering how stupid it actually was now.
It didn't impact us, but it would have if we weren't together. So there was a time in New York where basically they wanted people with the last names of certain letters to go out on one day, and then the next day they were going out the next day. It was ridiculous. Like, to your point, over the top craziness, and people complied.
Right, and here's the thing. It's not like you and I are some brilliant epidemiological rogue scholars over here, all right? We literally are just looking at data from all over the world and going, wait, this doesn't make any sense. Remember when airborne transmission was fought? That I was like, well, maybe, but it's really droplet. Do you realize the mental gymnastics that you have to go through to conclude that this is more likely to spread by a droplet that's heavier than the air, that goes 3 to 6 feet and then drops, versus aerosolized transmission that's lighter than air, that stays in the atmosphere for hours at a time and can still infect people hours later just by breathing in the aerosolized particles? And our brilliant health experts said droplets are way more likely. And again, everybody went, yeah, see, it's droplets. It's mostly droplets. You're like, how does that even make sense? In your mind, if you actually lay out these facts, how could you possibly reach that conclusion in good faith? And the answer is you can't. So I've said this before, and I'll say this again. Are you incompetent or are you corrupt? Because it's not both. I'm sorry, it's not neither. There's no way that you had good intentions, well-reasoned arguments that reach these conclusions. It's not possible. Sorry, you can't get conveniently stupid. So I don't know what to make of that, but here's what I know. There's no way that these arguments were put forth in good faith. And if you were one of the people that bought in and went all in on it, God bless you. I understand you got fooled. It happens. But if you did go out of your way to scream at somebody, probably should apologize to that person.
Yeah, because there's no way her 4-year-old son got to a point where he's going to yell at something without some kind of indoctrination. There's no way that kid knows better unless he is scared.
Right. And there was no reason for it. It was so... I mean, you faced the same thing of like not wearing a mask and people would come up to you and they felt like it was their, not only their right, but like their duty to be like, excuse me, there's a pandemic going on. And you're looking back at them like, I know.
Only one person ever came up to me and asked me
Really?
Yeah, and that was while I was voting.
Oh, I got a bunch.
Yeah, I literally got none. I mean, I don't know if it's just because I literally I was just doing my thing, man. I didn't pay attention to anybody. I just went around. Nobody bothered me whatsoever. Maybe it's I'm taller than everybody.
My favorite was, I mean, I'm not a little guy.
No, I know,
but
good
Lord. My favorite was still when I was volunteering at the Salvation Army, ringing the bells
the worst.
at Destiny USA in December. December of last year, when I was ringing a bell right after Kathy Hochul came in and was like, indoor masks are mandatory again. And somebody asked, like, based on what? Like, where's the law? Where's the order? She's like, well, we don't have one. So I was like, well, that's not constitutional. There's no way I'm complying. So I'm volunteering, ringing a bell with my kids to raise money for the Salvation Army. Got them singing Christmas carols and stuff. We're all into it, trying to get some people to donate. And some guy from the other side of the aisle, like 20 feet away, U-turns, comes over to me and asks me where my mask is. And I said, I'm not wearing one. And he said, well, there's a law. I said, no, there's not. And he said, how selfish are you? And I looked down at the apron I'm wearing and the bell in my hand. I'm like, I don't think very. Like, I don't know if selfish is the right word here, bud. And like, I'm going to take your picture. All right, okay. So, set the kids off to the side, gave him a big thumbs up and a smile, and he took my picture. And I'm just looking at this gentleman like, buddy, I hope you're doing well now. I hope you got past all this, but I don't know how you come back from that. Like, if you did that to a human being and then it turned out that I was entirely right and you were entirely wrong, how do you come back? Do you just own it? Do you ever come to the realization of like, wow, I really was an asshole? Holy crap.
Very rarely does that happen, I feel like.
This guy is too dug into the position. And that was, again, December, when by this point it was pretty well accepted that the masks were useless. Like, everybody acknowledged that cloth masks did nothing, and that was when they're still trying to push N95s and KN95s and all this. But all I could do was laugh. If your mask doesn't have a respirator, it ain't doing a thing, folks. Sorry.
Well, thankfully, Onondaga County was just recently, within the last couple of days, removed from the mandatory or recommended mask wearing color zone.
Nobody told me.
I know.
We changed everything.
We dominated the mask mandate again. We're so good.
God.
So let's take all this and turn it into politics. So, no, this is easy. We talked about this a little bit last week, I feel like. But so, yeah, let me, yep. So Kathy Hochul was asked during her debate with Lee Zeldin whether or not she would re-implement a, what was it? The
vaccine mandate.
The vaccine mandate, that's right. So
For kids. At schools.
She was following the CDC recommendation, right? I don't think she's come up with an answer yet, but do you think that COVID, and this is, I don't know how to answer this, but we're going to talk a little bit about midterms here. Do you think COVID has still stayed in the forefront of people's voting minds for this, or has inflation and crime and abortion and threat to democracy taken place of any of that? Like, are people still voting on COVID one way or the other, do you think?
Not a ton.
I mean, I am, but I want to know how many other people are actually voting, like, to hold those people, as you said, accountable for those who implemented policies that were destructive.
I think if you look at the people for whom COVID is the number one issue, it's probably a 2-to-1 or maybe a 3-to-1 ratio of people like you over people that still want all the restrictions and want more. I think those people have gone by the wayside. Now you're down to the true believers. If COVID's your number one issue, if I look 4 people where COVID is their number one voting issue, but 3 of them are voting against the institutions that did this. And 1 is voting for more Fauci, more Andrew Cuomo type orders, more of that. I think it's about 3-to-1 mix. But I don't think it's a huge proportion of people.
I don't think there's, hopefully, I could be wrong, but I feel like my sense is that there's a small sliver of people who would vote because they want more COVID policies, right? Like more lockdowns, more whatever. Like, it's a very minuscule people. But I wonder, I guess, is how many people are there like me, where I'm scarred for life from COVID. I can't unsee what I saw. I watched a bunch of people in power do nothing and just get rough shot and run over and basically destroyed the country. And so I cannot get past that as being my number one issue. Inflation is kind of like a byproduct of that issue. So, maybe there's some overlap there in the Venn diagram of voters, but I don't know how many people who recognize or are feeling the pain are going to vote because of inflation actually can be able to tie it the way I can, I feel like, to the COVID response. So maybe COVID still has some influence in the elections, but Kathy Hochul has turned and called herself an underdog in her race against Lee Zeldin. In the debate, she said this. Calls herself an underdog.
What?
Yeah. I'm going to see if I can find the exact quote. But I found this interesting.
This is like a few years ago when everybody wanted an outsider for president and Hillary Clinton.
So she was asked if she had any regrets or would have done anything differently. This is just a question at a press conference. It's like, I am the underdog in this race, she says, adds that she only been in the governor's race a short time. So basically she's, I took back, when I watched this, I kind of was like, are the internal polls really that bad that she's basically claiming that this is an attempt to rally the troops, right? Like sure. if you're the incumbent New York State Democratic governor, you're not an underdog to anybody. Ever. So the fact that she even used that word
is hilarious.
Beyond that, it makes me think that maybe the internal polls, after I saw this, that's when I bet on Lee Zeldin, to be honest with you. So I was like, I had like $10 in the Predict It app that I knew was sitting there, and I was like, oh my God, she thinks she's an underdog. So I wonder if the internal polls were so bad. And this was right after there was a couple polls where like the internal polling for Zeldin had him up a point, and there was like 4 points in Quinnipiac, I feel like, and that was when we talked about the big swish in of independent women voters towards Zeldin. So this is when all that kind of happened in a row, and that's when I made the bet on Zeldin. But this, coupled with going back to our trip in Chuck Schumer in Syracuse, I want to piggyback the quote unquote hot mic conversation between Senator Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden, which was completely staged. So that too made me think that it was a rally the troops moment, and that, hey, they're going to try to get this this narrative out there that they're struggling in some of these races and they need to rally the troops and get them out there. So we've already talked about a red wave, a red tsunami, whatever you want to talk about it. I didn't know how much of it was going to happen in New York. We talked a little bit about this with Zeldin being able to tighten the polls in New York, that bodes well for a bunch of Republican upstate candidates, because I feel like that's going to increase their turnout and their chances of winning. So maybe there's a mini red wave in New York. I still don't think Zeldin can win. I just the math just doesn't work for me yet. But I found her declaring herself the underdog, coupled with the Schumer-Biden hot mic thing, basically called a concern for that party's results in the midterms. I mean, which I think everybody already has come to the conclusion that they're going to get annihilated, but maybe even more so than they anticipated, and maybe even in New York.
Here's what I'm...
Have you come off do you think Zeldin can still win?
I do.
Okay.
But I think Zeldin has committed a tremendous blunder by not reaching out to the Libertarian Party in general and trying to bridge more of a gap there. Because that would have been the smartest political play, is at least send out the olive branch of, I know you're mad at him because they called you out and for your fake signatures. I got it. But you could still use and it's not a huge number of libertarians in the state, but if you're talking about a razor thin margin for this election, and your entire stance, basically the reason that you are coming at least within a shot of winning is largely because people want it. You're running as more of a libertarian than the current governor is on the primary issue of COVID. Now, crime is a little bit different, but okay, fine. We're not really going to be debating whether you're repealing laws. It's just you want to get rid of bail reform, which I don't think libertarians have a stance on one way or the other. Or do you guys?
I mean, not like an official party stance.
Okay.
I mean, there's concerns with cash bail that they have, but you could just look at what's going on, and you can see that whatever they implemented is not working the way they anticipated.
It ain't going well.
Right.
All right. So that was a no-brainer that you could have reached out, sent some kind of olive branch, and even done some type of a position for some key leaders. Just show them like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm contrite.
If I could just take this point, because I've actually reached out directly to the Lee Zeldin camp, but there is only... And it wouldn't just be for the libertarians, right? So if he did what you said and created an olive branch to the libertarians, what it really would be is, this is what I would have recommended and still recommend, and I don't know if it's worth doing anything at this point, but there's still time to get libertarian votes, is to apologize for the signature fiasco, acknowledge that the ballot election laws in New York State are, for minor parties, are unattainable. Like the metrics are so high that it's impossible.
It's fundamentally unfair.
It's unfair. And so just admit that, and then commit publicly to changing the election law, which there was a Republican Assemblyman, John Selka, who we've had on the show here, who introduced legislation last year to retroactively revert all the election laws back to 2019, basically undoing the election laws that were added in the 2020 budget and bringing us back to the metrics that which were still high for New York, some of the toughest in the nation, were still high, but bringing those back to those titles, which, if in fact was what would happen, we would have automatically requalified for ballot access. We would have a ballot line if that law would have passed. So all the libertarians are going to try to write in Larry Sharp because we're going to try to get back ballot access. That's our goal. That's our focus. Right. There's really not a inflation versus abortion issue. We're fighting for our lives as a political party in this state, and if we don't get 130,000 votes, then we're dead in the water again for another 2 years. So we're all going to vote for that. But if Lee Zeldin could have made some kind of public commitment to reverting and retroactively committing to, if he won, to revert back to the 2008 election law, we would be a party next year, and he could actually facilitate that, and it would look good to all the other parties, the Green Party, the Sam Party, the Independence Party, all these people who were affiliated with these other parties, and unaffiliated voters could feel like, hey, this was a reach across the aisle, if you will, but more of a, hey, I'm trying to create a big tent campaign, and I'm trying to bring in all these basically disenfranchised voters to my camp. And this could have been an olive branch to all those people, even though it could have been directed at the Libertarian Party. Other parties would have benefited, but I feel like it would have been a PR win for the campaign as a, hey, we're really trying to fix New York. And there was no attempt made, and he hasn't asked for our votes. I don't expect that to happen in the last week here. But that was my own assertion of how it made sense for libertarians to actually vote for Lee Zeldin, because we're voting to try to save our political lives. And the only way we can do that is get 130,000 votes or revert back to the old election laws. And he could have done it.
Yeah. I mean, and that would have been a smart play. So let's go back to your question.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that are standing out to this election for me that I don't recall seeing. I don't remember ever seeing a Chuck Schumer re-election ad in my entire life. I've never seen one. I've seen a lot of them this cycle. So I'm not telling you Chuck Schumer's going to lose, but I've never even seen him put up an ad. Like, now that I'm not saying he never did, but wherever he was advertising, it never reached me before. And I can promise you that years ago would have been the time to reach me far more than now. So that's weird to me. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, is a Democrat, calling herself the underdog as an incumbent for a party with a, 3-1 advantage?
2.86, I think it is, to 1. Yeah.
So that seems like, wait, what's happening here? Why is this happening?
The climate is definitely
different.
So
I'm not telling you that's going to lead to any specific results, but there's definitely these signs that are out there where you're going, oh, they're nervous. Wow, they're actually really nervous about some of this stuff, because I don't grasp, like, why is Chuck Schumer running ads? Why take the time? His seat has always been so 1,000% safe, you never had to.
And I think he's running ads, and I haven't seen any really, because he's the statewide candidate, all the votes that he can gain upstate are going to offset the Lee Zeldin votes. So, like, there's a trickle-down effect for his campaign. Any of these statewide office holders, by getting their voters out, should, in theory, trickle down to the down-ballot candidates. So I'm assuming that's why he's running ads. But that goes really to your point, is that these down-ballot candidates are getting annihilated.
Yes, and that's it. And I think that is what makes the most sense to me, is they must have really, really bad internal polling. And they can't feel good about Pennsylvania now after the Fetterman-Oz debate, because that was an absolute travesty for our nation's political environment.
I'm glad they put him up on stage so everybody could see it, to be honest with you.
I know.
Since we talked a little bit on the nation's race, let me just bring up this as a since we're already an hour in, and we still got 3 major topics to discuss.
Better get moving here.
Yeah. I did want to point out that the COVID queen, Governor Whitmer, seems to be in a dead heat with her race, which also is a kind of I would say a bellwether, but that's a typical, pretty Democrat secure state, where she's in a basically statistical dead heat with her challenger. So, and she made I think Corey DeAngelis made a correlation between her and Terry McAuliffe, because she basically made some kind of education comment, like off the cuff, but it turned really bad for her. So obviously keeping an eye on that. That could be an unforeseen switch within the Republican or for the Republicans too, I guess. So crazy times. We'll be all here. We'll all know this all in a week. So a week and a day.
Just don't go crazy. Yeah, it was all you had to do, but you went nuts. And here's the thing: you went nuts and you went after people's kids, and that is just never a winning strategy. For you to tell me anybody knows what's best for my kids better than me is just as a parent, it hits me the wrong way. Of like, wait. Like, well, they have all these degrees, and education's like, I mean, I have a couple degrees too, and I can promise you, it doesn't make me any better of a human being. It's not the degrees that got me to where I am. They helped, sure, but it's not inherently that I now am smarter than everybody because I'm very well educated. It is a joke. And everybody kind of knows it at this point. Like, it's not what it used to be. So to come out and tell me like, hey, and to talk about mandating the COVID vaccine for my kid, if you cannot look at a camera right now and say absolutely not, 0% chance you're getting my vote. I don't want to hear we'll think about it. I don't want to hear, well, we'll see what the data says at that time, because you've been telling me that for 2 years and you've been lying all along. So you want my vote? That's the first thing you got to tell me is absolutely under no circumstances will we be mandating the COVID vaccine for children.
Yeah, and our current unelected governor has yet to do so. So let's switch up to one of our favorite topics, abolishing the FBI.
Sure.
The Seth Rich edition of Abolish the FBI.
Have we decided if they're incompetent or corrupt yet?
I mean, I have.
Okay, let's keep going.
Headline. This is from Slay News. FBI asks court to seal Seth Rich laptop evidence for, wait for it, 66 years. Like a blink of an eye compared to Pfizer data. So this stems from a September ruling. U.S. District Judge for the Eastern District of Texas ordered the FBI to produce the information it possesses related to Seth Rich's laptop. This is part of a FOIA request. The lawyer, I believe his name is Ty Clevenger. Yep, Ty Clevenger. So you can kind of skim through. There's a link to this article in the show notes, and you can kind of go to Technofog's Twitter handle here. He's got some he's posted the official order, which you can kind of skim through and read. But again, after order to produce the information, the FBI basically said, yeah, we'll produce it in 66 years. So first they said they didn't have anything on Seth Rich's laptop. Now they say whatever they do have has to wait 66 years. For those of you who don't know, Seth Rich is, I think he was a data analyst for the DNCC during 2016 presidential run or 2020. Must have been
16.
No, it was 20. It was after 2006. It was in between 2006. It was after, because he was leaking the stuff from 2016.
Got it.
So shortly after 2016 election, I'm assuming, he was murdered walking home in his upscale neighborhood, I believe, and nothing was stolen from him. He was just murdered. And it has long been believed that he was the source of the DNCC email leaks to WikiLeaks. So it's thought that he was the source of the information that basically outed Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the Hillary Clinton camp as rigging the election against Bernie Sanders. And we'll never know, as far as I can tell. So it was long, his family came out and said, this is not true. Like, stop reporting this as a conspiracy theory, whatever. But now that a FOIA request, listen, they at least, I'm guessing, acknowledged that the FBI has some information on the laptop now. And, he was shot, I'm reading in the back here, he was shot July 10th, 2016. So I don't have much to add to this other than the peculiarity of the let's wait 66 years to get this evidence. That seems to be the plan A for the FBI. Like, we got the information, but we'll give it to you when we're damn ready.
We just need time.
We need time to vet it.
Right.
66 years.
I mean, listen, if you asked me to go back through of like, hey, all the records you have on this, could you share them? Yeah, whatever. I don't have a lot to hide. Like, it's a pretty open book for the most part. I don't even cheat on my taxes. Like, I'm a pretty straightforward guy. So here you go. If I told you, like, if you asked me, hey, can I see your records on this? And I was like, yeah, listen, I'll get you a little bit at a time. Just, give me 5 or 10 years and I'll get everything over to you. You'd look at me like, what, 5 or 10 years? Like, why would you need 5 or 10 years to send over PDF files and hard drives? Like, that's pretty straightforward now. We're not talking about the old days of handwriting on carbon copy paper to get me this information. So if I went, you know what, 20 years. You're like, you're joking, right? There's no possible justification why this would take you 20 years. I went to 66. That is weird.
Yeah. Like I said, we haven't really, I don't think we've once mentioned anything about Seth Rich on the show here, in large part because I don't really know what happened, but I do see all the smoke surrounding it.
Yeah.
And there was let's just say an inference made by Julian Assange that implied Seth Rich was the leaker of those said documents. So I don't know, but let's just chalk it up.
It was the Russians. I was reliably informed it was the Russians.
Let's just chalk it up to the FBI has no credibility. So at this point, all bets are off for me. It could literally be anything.
Like I said, it's their own fault they don't have any credibility. They should stop lying and doing all this corrupt stuff.
All right. So let's move on and talk about the latest nominee for the craziest story of the year. Paul Pelosi, Mr. Hussong. Paul effing Pelosi, the greatest stock trader in the history of mankind. What?
This story's so awesome.
When it started to break weirdly, I was like, oh no. Like, this is really going to get bad. And it was just as Twitter was basically owned by Musk, and we'll get to that in a second. But those two things basically correlated almost timely perfectly, where Twitter was taking over and everybody was like, we can post anything we want. And then all of a sudden you're getting headlines of Paul Pelosi and his gay prostitute lover are in a hammer fight in his house or something, right? So
is it an actual hammer, or is hammer a euphemism? That's what I'm really curious
so
about.
I'm going to say that it's a hammer.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, let's just, I guess, backtrack a little bit.
Hang on. You got to start from the beginning, where it got reported at the end of last week that Paul Pelosi, the husband of Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, third in line for the presidency of this great nation, her husband was brutally attacked in the middle of the night by someone breaking into their home while Nancy Pelosi was out of town, while wielding a hammer.
You want me to see if I can play the call?
If you can, yeah. And I'll keep going. Do you have it right now?
I have it.
Hit it.
Northern 4 car, 8 priority 910, 2640 Broadway, cross of Scott and Normandy. 14-hour copy. RP stated that there's a male in the home and that he's going to wait for his wife. RP stated that he doesn't know who the male is, but he advised that his name is David and that he is a friend. RP sounded somewhat confused. Is a friend. RP sounded somewhat confused. 12 over back and copy.
So that's the 911 call, the original communication. Now, I'll point out a couple things. They say he sounded confused. He's a well-known drinker. It was also 2 a.m, so he could have been woken up, and I would have been confused if somebody was in my house. Right? Yeah, for sure. So he could have felt. Listen, I'm not sure that a friend meant that he knew the person, or if it was some kind of code of like, right now nothing's happening or whatever. But like, it could have been. It's reported that the guy. Well, first of all, there's so many places where I could go to say, who opened the door, right? So this is the one we have no information to this. But apparently, when the cops arrived, a third person opened the door. We don't know who that is. Whether or not they were trying to help Paul Pelosi or help the assaulter, why they were there, nothing happened until the cops got there. So when the cops got there, apparently the report is that both gentlemen, Paul Pelosi and the intruder, both were in possession of the same hammer. So they apparently were like in a tug of war over the same hammer of some sort, fighting over the hammer or whatnot. When the cops got there, the intruder broke the hammer free from Paul Pelosi and then started attacking him with the hammer right in front of the police. all weird to me. All of that whole part, like all those sentences that I just outlined I don't understand how any of that happened. How did a dude walk onto Paul Pelosi, the third in command of the United States, just walk to their house and just get in there? Now, again, the Pelosi's have their own social weirdness that we don't have to go into, but the whole thing's weird. This dude was, immediately the politics became out, right, too. So first of all, he was a MAGA guy because he was posting about QAnon and some collection stuff. Then it turns out he was part of a nudist colony in Berkeley and has BLM signs and a marijuana LGBTQ flag on his property. Like, the dude is all over the place. Easy to say the dude is wacko, right? He's a psychopath, it seems like.
He's mentally ill.
There's a bunch of stories you can read about how mentally ill he is. Who knows? There's the thought that he said he's waiting. Where's Nancy? That was the quote to the in the report here. Who knows when that was said and what reference that was said to? I don't even know where to start here. If you have something you'd like to fill in the blanks, the whole story is basically turned into Jussie Smollett Part 2.0 here, and I don't know what to make of any of the pieces yet because some of the main building blocks of creating a story are so until I know who that third person is, I can't figure out how the events would have unfolded after that.
I got a theory.
Okay, go. I'm ready. I love theories.
I don't know if this is true. I don't know if this is false.
Theories.
But piecing stuff together from what I can gather in some untoward parts of the internet and Twitter. And God bless Elon Musk for owning Twitter right now because this makes it so much funnier. Anyways, so I'm supposed to buy the official narrative that this hammer-carrying MAGA Republican somehow at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning broke into Nancy Pelosi's house, successfully broke in to the home of the Speaker of the House. This mentally ill dude just got in. All right, sure, I guess. Then Paul Pelosi is so bewildered by this break-in that he calls 911, or somebody does.
Supposedly, the suspect went to the bathroom and Pelosi dialed while he was away, like secretively.
Okay,
supposedly.
So, again, this guy broke in and then went to the bathroom because that's usually what home invaders do. Is they'll leave you alone to go and get to the bathroom break. And was it Paul's hammer or was it his hammer?
That has to be determined.
Fine. Either way, regardless,
we still don't know who was in their underwear either.
I'm under the impression it was both.
Right. I've seen both, and then I've seen, which, again, it would make sense at 2 a.m. for Paul Pelosi to be in his underwear. No offense. But, I mean, like, the intruder being in his underwear is quite a different story.
Like, this dude just broke in his underwear? Did he go in, strip down, use the bathroom?
I mean, as being a former member of a nudist, or maybe a member of a nudist colony, he might have felt like he needed to dress up to get into the Pelosi's.
Okay.
So, underwear?
Underwear on? Nobody's even asked if they were boxers, briefs, I feel like that's also relevant to this. That's not really. I'm just kidding. But, all right, so here's my working theory that seems to align with the facts best from what I can gather so far. Now, it's long been rumored that Mr. Paul Pelosi is a frequent visitor, patron, if you will, of some of the more notorious gay bars in San Francisco. Don't know if that's true, don't know if that's false, but just bear with me. Now, I've also read that this man, what's this dude's name?
David DePape.
David DePape, of course it is nuts. Like, I don't want to say that too equally, but he's crazy. Like, he's mental illness. He has mental health problems that are well documented, but he's not in a great place, mentally speaking. But I did read that he is allegedly a part of something called the Castro Nudists.
That is correct.
Fidel Castro, the Castro Nudists. And their big ploy is they pose as homosexuals, or maybe they are homosexuals, I don't know. And they then get into some compromising positions with people in power and use that to extort them. So let's just say there's some truth to that rumor. And again, please don't cancel me for misinformation. I am not alleging any of this is factually true. I'm just saying it
lines up.
Boy, that's a circle peg in a square in a circle hole if I've ever seen one. So let's just assume that, say his last name again.
DePape.
Mr. DePape is sitting at one of these gay bars in San Francisco, and in walks Paul Pelosi. And now this Mr. DePape is no fan of the elites, as he has made abundantly clear, and he thinks they are just shitting on the little guy and they are evil and et cetera, et cetera. Maybe we can interview him. But anyways.
Probably not.
Paul Pelosi's in. He knows Paul Pelosi happens to be a frequent member. Maybe he even set out to go target this gentleman. And it works. As the 78-year-old Paul Pelosi decides he's going to have a little weekend fun while Nancy's out of town. And, I mean, honestly, never mind. I'm going to leave that joke alone. But they go back to his place, which would explain how David DePape got into the home of the Speaker of the House. It's not like this guy has no security. It's not like there's no security cameras on the house. Of course there are.
And I'll point this out right here just for a second. So they show a picture of the broken weird rear door. It's a glass door. All the glass is on the outside of the... Just saying.
That normally does not happen when you break in from the outside.
I mean, you can see it all right here. There's a bunch of glass on the outside area, and some of it is quite far away from the window, like it was expelled outwards. But go ahead.
Either way. So let's, again, hypothetically, let's just say they get back to the place. They have their little tryst. They have some fun, consensual adults. Nothing wrong with it.
Maybe
God
he was
bless.
promised a threesome, and Nancy was nowhere to be found. I'm putting that thought in your head.
I'm gonna. If that was promised, never mind. I can't. I can't. Anyways, so let's just assume that is what happens, and then it turns out Mr. DePape had bad intent, and he turns around and is basically like, "Well, now that this happened, you're gonna pay me, or you're gonna do this," and then, Mr. Pelosi in his inebriated state is like, "Wait, what do you mean you're gonna wait till Nancy gets home and you're gonna do all this? Like, you can't do that." And now he's got to get out. I don't know. I mean, this is where I'm going to go a little off the rails. I suppose he thought it'd be a good idea to grab this hammer and come out and be like, "You're going to get out." And that's where the hammer came from. I can't imagine that David DePape was walking around with a hammer.
I mean, if the assertion is that he broke into the Pelosi's wearing underwear and nothing but a hammer, only jives, it jives with what you're saying, but that's also the actions of a crazy person.
Right. And so this is my point, is maybe the truth, as it generally is somewhere in the middle of it was a consensual thing, but the guy that was involved had some negative intent for Paul Pelosi, because Paul Pelosi's an elitist and insider trading stockbroker and the husband of the third most powerful person in the country right now. So if that were the case and then it went south, I'm not saying that it's what it is, but if we're going Occam's razor here, I feel like it's some version of that probably makes the most sense as to how we find ourselves in this position, more so than an underwear-clad, hammer-wielding schizophrenic successfully broke into the house of Paul Pelosi through the back window using a hammer, excused himself to use the bathroom, and then struggled for control of the hammer with Paul Pelosi. Did Paul Pelosi get the jump on him? Like, this dude's 45.
No, they didn't attack until after the police got there.
I'm saying. Like,
listen, this will all come out when we get the body cam from the police officers. Maybe we'll get the video cameras from the Pelosi residence.
Oh my God. I didn't even think about that. They're never going to release the footage from the residence because they don't have to. But the body cam footage, I believe, is a public.
I'm sure people have already requested FOIA information for that.
I'm so happy.
And where's the mugshot for this dude?
I don't know. But didn't he say, like, yeah, he claimed that it was a consensual sexual relationship.
I read that, but that was...
I don't know if that's been verified.
Right, that was what Elon shared that. I can pull this up for you guys. I think it's down at the bottom of this article. Yeah, here we go. So Hillary Clinton immediately, turns political, turns this, trying to score some political points with this. I'll read her tweet here, begrudgingly. The Republican Party and its mouthpieces now regularly spread hate and deranged conspiracy theories. It is shocking, but not too surprising, that the violence is result. As citizens, we must hold them accountable for their words and actions that follow. So this is Hillary Clinton sharing the LA Times story about David DePape spreading QAnon off far-right ideas. Elon Musk, the owner of Twitter, replies to that tweet with, "There is a tiny possibility there might be more to this story than meets the eye." Now, I don't know if this article can still open. I'll try, because yesterday it got flooded and you could not open it. But this is a less than credible news site, let's just say, I mean, they're entertaining to read, but I don't know where they get their thing. But he basically, the headline is Paul Pelosi was drunk again in a dispute with his gay prostitute. And so Elon actually shared that article.
It's hilarious.
Which is hilarious. I don't know where this goes. I can't see people not stop reporting on it because of the people involved and now the crazy nature of the story. Like,
here's the thing. You could actually make Paul Pelosi into the sympathetic figure here of like, yes, he is a closeted homosexual that does have sex with men, and this dude turned on him. He'd be like, oh, that sucks. But you're not going to. You're going to turn this into, you're going to try to make this about a MAGA Republican thing, and everybody's going to be like, all right, we know what happened. Like, you can only cover this if you were genuinely telling the truth, right? If you just said, hey, I was sleeping in my underwear, this dude broke in, and he's obviously touched. So he went to use the bathroom. I took that opportunity. I called 911. I don't know why I called him a friend. I don't know why I knew his name. But I knew he wasn't going to leave. He was just going to sit around and wait for Nancy to attack Nancy with a hammer, I guess. I don't know. But you got videos. You got cameras all over the place. This shouldn't be complicated. You should be able to say, okay, yeah, got it. But if you're not releasing the footage, that's where I'm going to have some questions of, wait. What are you covering up? What is it that you're hiding? And listen, it all lines up. All that stuff would make a ton of sense if it turns out to be true. Not telling you it is true. But if it turned out, how surprised would you be?
Not at all.
Okay. That's where I'm at, too. I think that is, all right, what's the most plausible explanation here? Like, boy, that one checks a lot of boxes and explains a lot of things about why it would have gone down this way. If that's the story. Or maybe he just did hire a male hooker and they got into a fight about drugs. I mean, I'm not ruling that out. That's possible. But that seems... Why call 911? Like, you got Secret Service and stuff around, right?
I don't know.
You're Paul Pelosi.
Well, he's so technically Secret Service only goes for the spouses aren't included in that service, but you would think they have some type of security on site at their house.
Yeah.
Then again, if I wanted to be devil's advocate, I mean, if Paul Pelosi is in fact an alcoholic and drunk every night, he could be not setting the alarm every night either when he gets home, or you know what I mean? Like it could have been just self-inflicted errors allowing for access to his site. But
maybe I'm giving him too much credit for how ridiculously locked down their house must be. Like if my wife was the house speaker, all right, I can't imagine my house would ever be unlocked. Like it would never be easy to get into.
Yeah. I totally agree. I just don't know what they have. So, but it shouldn't be Secret Service, I don't think. But let's finish up here. For all of you who've stuck with us for the hour and 20 plus minutes here, we thank you. And I'll remind everybody to like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, and if you're listening to us on the in your car or at home in your favorite podcast service, please leave us a 5-star rating review if you so feel inclined. So. We touched about this little last week, Mr. Hussong. It's a done deal. As we pointed out a couple times today, Elon Musk officially owns Twitter.
Yay.
And immediately fires all the officials, pretty much everybody. Parag Agrawal, the CEO, the head of legal there, what's her name? Vijaya Gade, also fired. She is basically the person who is... at least pointed to for the content moderation results of Twitter, and she is no longer here. If you remember, she was on the Joe Rogan show with Jack Dorsey several years back with Tim Pool, basically talking about all of the Twitter shadow banning and suspending accounts, and this is before they actually banned Trump. So a little bit of, celebration here for maybe a new leaf being turned over here. I found the most interesting part, not the firing of the staff or the officials there, which I felt like was almost an inevitability, but I thought it was more interesting that, and I'll read this headline from Bazinga, Elon Musk reportedly brings in Tesla engineers into Twitter office to scrutinize codes after takeover. So they brought in the Tesla engineers, the Galaxy brains over there at Tesla, and brought them into Twitter and took a look at all their code there. So we talked about this, and I'll touch on this and then turn it over to you here. So Twitter, this is Elon. Twitter will be forming a content moderation council with widely diverse viewpoints. No major content decisions or account reinstatements will happen before that council convenes. So this was dated October 28th. Many people thought that Elon had actually reinstated Kanye, but that was actually done internally by Twitter before Elon took over. It was he had a 2-week suspension, and that 2 weeks lifted just happened to be on the same day that Elon took over. So Elon was not involved with Kanye's or Ye's, whatever his name is, reinstatement to Twitter. And then I'll piggyback this up. This is, again, Elon Musk sharing that tweet with, to be clear, we have not yet made any changes to Twitter's content moderation policy. So they haven't changed anything yet. I do think that before the takeover, there was some purge of some bots because there were some inorganic looking follower counts, increases and decreases that kind of happened all in big chunks. So I feel like there was some kind of switch being flipped by the outgoing tech team there at Twitter. But we'll see how this, obviously everybody's waiting to see if they're going to undo Trump. You know, I prefer to see Project Veritas be the very first reinstatement there. Babylon Bee is still suspended, right, for basically they started the whole thing, right? I mean, I guess they should be the first one undone just to kind of, since they're
I want the bad cat. The
Man of the Year award tweet from the Babylon Bee is basically what started this whole thing. We reported on it back then. And that's when Elon basically said, I think I have to buy Twitter. And here we are.
That's right.
There we are.
That's right. When a parody website got booted for making too offensive of a joke.
That was a solid joke, though.
It was well done. Like, hey, credit where credit's due.
So, I don't know. What's your we've been talking about Musk taking over Twitter since April when it was first hinted at, and we're here, right? So, like, we've reached the point where now we can maybe see a switch in the culture on Twitter. Obviously he hasn't changed anything institutionally or the back end there to actually make that happen. I don't think yet anyway, but positive, right? I mean, this is all we think, and we still don't know if Elon's a Bond villain or a good guy yet here, but I feel like so far so good with this.
I mean, it could only have gotten better than what it was. It was terrible.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah. And now it's funny watching the people that have been championing all these, like, oh, it's a private company and they can do whatever they want, so shut up that you got kicked off. Doesn't matter. Man, Twitter became a public utility really fast in their eyes, and it's unbelievable that we let a billionaire take over a public utility that is so essential to the town square common interaction. I think it's hysterical. I love that he just went in and started firing people. Like,
well, he went in first with his sink, if you all remember.
I do. That was awesome, too. I love that he's just going in and basically I'm not even going to pretend to humor any of you. Get out.
I didn't bring it up here, but did you see that the staff made some ransom
demand letter ever written?
How many sentences do you think Elon got into that before he stopped reading?
The whole thing and laughed hysterically the entire time, I guarantee you. Like, this is the problem. When older people look at this younger generation, this is exactly what they're talking about when they call you the participation trophy era. Because for some reason, you think by nature of the fact that you work at Twitter and somebody else is coming in, that the best thing you can do is write a demand letter of your new boss, demanding that nobody be fired, demanding that all your benefits that were contractually written are there still guaranteed, and the ones not written in that you've gotten. And you have the audacity to write a letter not requesting, not asking, but demanding that the person who just dropped $40 billion on this company has to listen to you? No, not $40 billion. What did he spend?
$44 billion.
$44 billion. And you thought that was the course of action that was going to lead to the results? Is it like you are a child throwing a temper tantrum at this point? You have no leverage whatsoever, and going in that way just basically confirms for the boss, all right, can I get a list of names of who signed this? It'll just make the next 2 weeks go a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, like I said, he's already talked about cutting 75% of the staff, so.
Good.
Yeah.
He should. Yeah.
And so let's end on this one little side note. Did you buy any Doge before Elon took over?
No.
I did.
Of course you did.
Just $75 worth, just to see. I was like, I'm just gonna, yeah. So now I own like 680 Doge, and it went from like 70 cents to 14 cents. All right, it went up to 15 cents. Now it's back around like 13, but just ridiculous.
Good for you. I'm happy for you.
Not as good as my Tilray though. That's up to 415, up 14% today.
I hope it goes to the moon.
Potheads. All right. I feel like we covered a lot there in an hour and a half.
I agree.
the world is a crazy place. We could have talked for 2.5 hours easy because I didn't even talk about. I didn't talk about the progressive left reemerging and then getting swatted down and then crumbling like wet paper bags and being like, maybe we like war.
They folded so fast. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. So, all right. Anything enlightening you'd like to leave the folks with until next week? Or have we decided? I know we don't have anything in concrete, but have we decided if we're going to do an election show?
We'll do an election show.
So maybe we'll do a couple hours. Like maybe we'll come on like 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Just as the polls are closed, trying to assess some of the early results, and then kind of hold out and see what happens for at least some of the major elections here. So plan on that, guys. We're still going to do a show Monday though, more afternoon, and then we'll come back here Tuesday evening for a live election show. So look forward to that. Again, anything else you'd like to leave the folks with?
If you happen to be a powerful married male and you like engaging in outside relationships with other men, you should really be more selective about who you get. Just saying, in general terms. Be selective.
Yeah. I mean, he seems to make bad decisions a lot, unless he's trading stocks. So on that note, we thank you all for sticking with us for this marathon edition of Sports Clicks and Politics. We will see you all again next Monday.